afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about the future of Douglas County School District. There is no more exciting time to be involved in the education of our kids than right now in today's world. And what we know is the world that our kids are going to walk into will be so much different, not only from the world that we walked into, but even from the world my kids walked into 2 years ago. The world is changing and moving so quickly. And as a school district, we have to be ready because we don't want our kids to just have the skills to adapt to a new world. We want to make sure our kids have the skills to lead that new world and to lead that change. And in order to do that, we have to think about what we need to do here in Douglas County School District as a school system, as a community, as parents, as teachers, as business leaders. What do we need to do to make sure that the kids in Douglas County are ready to lead that change? And so we're entering into a strategic planning opportunity where we will look at and imagine what 2035 will look like, could look like, and what our kids will need to be able to navigate that world. And then we'll work backwards and create a roadmap so that we make sure that as a school system, we are doing everything we can to make sure that our kids are leading that change. And so just to give you kind of that frame, we have an incredibly special guest with us here today, Dr. Bill Daggett, if you could stand up for a second. Dr. Daggett founded the Successful Practices Network and the International Association of School Leadership. He'll talk about how our kids have changed over the course of the last 10, 20, 30 years, and how our school systems need to begin to think about adapting to the workforce that our kids are going to be walking into. And with that, I'm going to let him talk a little more about his background. But Dr. Daggett, thank you so much for being with us. And we're really excited to hear from you today. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you. Delighted to be here, share a little information. Actually think a little bit about what's the future for our kids look like, and therefore what do we need to do different as educators. How many in the room have a son or a daughter who's a preteen, a teen, or in their early 20s? Okay, everybody just raise your hands. How many of you hope the child or children, you just raised your hands about sometime in the next decade that they become independent? It's the wish, yes. The wish of every parent, right? I want to talk about them and what we may need to do in education to make sure indeed they do become independent. As I do that, I work with an organization that is working in school districts throughout the United States as well as internationally. And when Erin began a conversation with us about your strategic plan, we said, yeah, we'd like to work with you. We have the unique opportunity to have more chances to work in more districts than we possibly can do. I want to tell you why we said we'd like to work with Douglas County. We absolutely believe this is a pace-setter school district in the country, not only in Colorado. You're one of the best school districts in the country. And you have a long and rich history of doing a good job, especially in college prep. But what really impresses me, you are also moving forward with things like micro-credentials. So while a lot of people talk about college and career ready, most districts are either college ready focused or career ready focused. We think you are posed to be the national leader in both. And so my comments today will kind of lay the groundwork of why I think that is so very important. And so in many ways, whatever you do in your strategic plan, don't abandon what's working. And you're working pretty well. But also don't let it be an impediment from making changes. At the end of my comments, Erin and I will go into Q&A with you, and we're going to put up a QR code. And when you go to that QR code, there's going to be 3 questions. And we're going to ask you to give us your best advice on each of these 3 questions. Because one of the other reasons we wanted to work with the district is it was clear that Erin and her leadership team was committed to hearing the voice of the staff and the community. And I cannot tell you how many districts put a strategic plan together by bringing in 20 or 30 people and having them cook it up. It won't work. It's got to involve everyone. And so we need your advice on the early ends here of what you think is important. I say all this because I'm convinced we're about to enter the third wave of school reform in my adult life. The first one was way, way, way back before almost any of you were probably many of you even born, but it was the nation at risk. How many ever remember hearing about the nation at risk? And the push was this. America was beginning to feel that there were other nations nipping at its heels economically. Specifically back then, Japan and Germany. And business and industry said to elected officials across the country, we need to relook at our schools. We got to increase standards. We got to do some things differently. And they created this national commission with some recommendations. Key thing is, it was pressure from business that created the nation at risk. It was not educators saying we need to do something different. Happened a second time in 2002, one that some of you may remember more about, the No Child Left Behind. And with it, they created a byline. Anybody remember the byline? College and career ready. But most districts played it out as college ready. And state after state began to add more standards. And I am sorry, but you lead the nation as a state in having the most standards of anybody. Your state has never seen a standard it doesn't like. And they never take anything off the plate. And so we increasingly have got our teachers and administrators on a treadmill that we just keep turning faster and faster and saying, you got to cover it all because it might be on the test. That was an event that came out of, and a movement that came out of the No Child Left Behind movement. For the third time, we're about to see more and more pressure. We are seeing more and more pressure on both sides of the political aisle for school reform. And I believe after the election, it doesn't matter what party gets the presidency or Congress, I think we're going to see a national commission. And the reason is we serve as an advisor to several governors on both sides of the aisle, and they're all saying the same thing. They're being hammered by business and industry because they can't find workers. And every business has got a help wanted sign out. And therefore they're hiring people they may have not wanted to hire in the past. And they're not showing up for work. And they might have bad work ethic. And unfortunately, they're blaming schools. And I suggest to you it's not our fault, but it's also our problem we may have to solve. And so I think we're about to see the third wave of school reform. Because of that, I think you got to adjust your North Star. What's pushing this is AI. Anybody listen to ABC News this morning at 7 o'clock? Anybody at 7 o'clock this morning? Anybody? Because on national ABC News, 10 of the first 15 minutes this morning was not about Israel and the bombing, was not about last night's debate, was about Microsoft's new, what they call, Copilot voice. Ladies and gentlemen, AI is sweeping the country, whether we like it or not. And we're going to pay attention to it this afternoon. But we got to pay attention to more than just AI, because it's within the culture that AI is coming at us. And that begins with the fact that our kids are different. Today's students are different than our 20th century schools were designed for. They're coming to us with different backgrounds. We have an explosion in students from different cultures, with different beliefs and family supports. But we have also the realization that they're an extension of their bodies, this technology. Can I have your iPhone?
Oh, sure.
I'm in your room on a device like this. Anybody in the room that doesn't have a device like this? Anybody? Do the kids have this technology? Is it an extension of their bodies? They have never lived without it. Can you imagine if tomorrow morning suddenly you no longer had access to the internet or iPhones or tablets or internet? Change your life, wouldn't it? But I bet you many of you can remember a world without any of those things. Today's kids can't. And because they've been on the technology so early, so often, they expect when they go on that technology and ask for something, how quickly should they get it? Immediately. And it has had an impact, whether we like to deal with it or not, on brain development. The brain is a muscle. They've developed it differently, and we're playing it out as a mental health issue. It's actually a brain development issue, and it's more than just attention deficit disorder. We need to understand the incredible capacity they're going to have at our fingertips, whether we integrate it in our education program or not. Today's kids did not grow up in a play-based childhood that we did. They grew up in a screen-based childhood. They are very comfortable with the technology. It has good and bad implications, but it's deeper than just the technology. These kids are different in other ways. How many of you, within 6 months of turning legal age to get your driver's license, got your driver's license? How many got it on the first day? Hands way up, keep them up. Look around the room, first day. Look at last year's nationwide high school graduates. As they walked across the stage to get their high school diploma, how many had a driver's license versus the number or percent that had their driver's license nationwide in the year 2000? That is a fundamental shift in behavior. Think about all you learned through trial and error because you had a driver's license. It was a way of life. How many had at least one part-time job before you graduated from high school? To me, even more astounding is how many of you had at least one or more date before you graduated from high school. Yeah. You're proud of how many you had. I got it. You were, yeah. Yeah. These are fundamental changes in behavior. They're different. And many of the skills and experiences we had, play-based childhood, to these experiences, created a series of skills that AI can't do. And where I'm going to take you by the end of this is we've got to prepare our students to have the skills that AI does not have. Because no employer is going to pay you to do what AI can do faster, more efficiently than a human being. And the biggest deficit we may have is not content. While content is still very important, you'll see, it's a set of skills that they're coming to our schools with less and less. At the exact same time when they leave, they need more and more of. That's the big gap. Today's kids are the most connected generation ever, electronically, and the least connected at the exact same time. And why this becomes especially a problem, and you're not experiencing this so much in Douglas County, but the nation is. And that is fewer and fewer young people. If we go back to the year 2000, U.S. population, 39% of this nation's population in 1960 was under 19 years of age. 39% under 19. And 13% was above 65. For every 3 young people, there was only one a senior citizen because of the baby boomers. A few years ago, they began to retire, so their number began to go up. At the exact same moment that we had a decline in the number of young people. And it is now projected by 2035, there will be more people in this country over 65 than under 19. And the labor shortage we now have, will look like the good old days. And that's what employers are really focused on, that this labor shortage issue is going to get exponentially worse, both in number and in the skills our young people have. And so, what's that workplace going to look like? It's being pushed by AI. Now, AI is not new. It's being built off of the reality we're in a virtual world, a digital world. And it's not new because you all were using it for several years. How many Googled something sometime today? How many have ever used Alexa or Siri? Isn't it amazing how quickly they all can get information for you? Instantly. Where do they all get their information from? Same source. The internet. But here's the problem. The internet has got embedded within it political biases, depending on who put it in. The internet has got information that's just downright wrong. And now we keep hearing things about, well, we've got to fact check everything. You're hearing that in the political season. Well, what one side's political fact checking is the opposite of the other side, causing great confusion. But it's rest. I can find any position you want me to take and can find on the internet. I do this every morning. I jog 4 miles on a treadmill, not because I like to. To get through the pain of it, I watch television. And I spend half my time watching Fox News and half my time watching the opposite of Fox News. I pick one of the liberal stations. I did that this morning. I would swear that those two networks watched a different debate last night by what they were reporting. Anybody want to tell me which side is right? And so we've had this for a long time. Embedded in it, however, is a lot of information that may or may not be right, that is driven by political and other related views, ideological views, but it can find information for you in an instant. That all changed in terms of being the cutting edge technology in November 2022, when a little company that nobody had heard of called OpenAI created ChatGPT. How many have been on ChatGPT? Hands way up high. How many in the room have never been on ChatGPT? Don't be embarrassed, okay? Because most people have. We got 3 in the room. What's the difference? What's the difference between non-generative AI, Google, Alexa, Siri, and ChatGPT? They both draw from the same data source, the internet, with all its flaws. But generative AI, ChatGPT, can take the information and then, based upon what you ask it to do, by writing a prompt, it creates new information for you. But the key is, you got to know how to write the prompt. And most people think writing a prompt is just a simple statement. Now, in the back row, we got people from the budget department, right? Am I right? Yeah, okay. He's shaking his head no, going like this. But do you know that the next year's draft of your budget, you should use ChatGPT or a later version of AI? Why? How do you do that? Well, to write the prompt, you should begin the prompt by scanning in this year's budget. It can be 150 pages long. That can be part of the prompt. And then add the bullet points that you think need to be modified, updated from last year's budget. It will do the first cut of the budget for you, like that. HR, it can do all kinds of things for you. But once you get the information, you better be a really sophisticated AI editor to make sure it didn't mess something up or didn't pull from information you don't want used, that you think is either politically biased or absolutely incorrect. So you've got to be how to write a prompt and how to be a sophisticated AI editor are foundational skills with stage 2 of AI. So please tell me where it's in your curriculum. Nearly every middle school and high school kid is using AI. It's probably a more basic foundational skill in AI, in language arts than any other skill that they're actually using. It's just not part of our curriculum because our curriculum takes 5 years to modify. Let me keep going. Anything you use it for, you got an 80-20 rule, which is it'll save you about 80% of your time. But writing the prompt to being a sophisticated AI editor takes time and skill. And that's the 20%. But let me give you one example. It's a personal example. Do we anybody in the room have a responsibility for special ed? Everybody has some degree of responsibility. Raise your hand for special ed. Okay, so y'all know how much time it takes to do IEPs. I have a daughter with severe disabilities. She has something called Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. Puts her on the deep end of autism and the deep end of epilepsy. She's nonverbal. She's in her late 40s, but her mental age is probably around 2 or 3. She loves to play with 2 and 3-year-olds. Anybody understand why? They're her peers in her mind. But Audrey gets really frustrated if you don't understand what she's trying to communicate to you. But she's nonverbal. And she gets frustrated, she'll do one thing. As hard as we've tried to break it, we haven't been able to. She goes for your hair. And she will pull it, and she'll pull it right out of your head. Anybody see a problem with letting her play with 2 and 3-year-olds? So my wife Bonnie and I said, let's try something. Let's pretend Audrey's back 10 years old. And let's write a prompt, and that's the first of 4 paragraphs we wrote. Let's write a prompt and ask it to create an IEP for Audrey. We did that. We hit send. 7 seconds later, it began to print out a 17-page IEP. And Bonnie and I read it, and we said in all these years, we never saw that comprehensive or good of an IEP that hit her academic, her social, her health, her mental health, all the services that were needed. How many hours in Douglas County schools are spent writing IEPs every year? Please stop doing it. Please use AI. It will save you 80% of your time. Folks, in this district, that is tens of thousands of hours. And how about if you provide that services directly back to the kids? It can do lesson plans for you. It can write assessments. It can grade assessments. It can do curriculum. It can do all kinds of tasks. Please think about doing those. From administrators in the room and those that work in central administration, it can do communications for you. It can help you with your data systems. It can draft your budgets. It can do HR searches for you. It can do initial cuts of legal issues for you. The list is endless. But it also brings challenges. It brings challenges to our teachers because it's an intrusion on our 20th century instructional practices. Because you give a kid an assignment, they can use AI to do the assignment. How many have had that experience already? Right? And it's a problem. And so the question is, do you block it, as some districts are trying to do, or do you modify your instructional practices to be consistent with what kids need to know, do, and be like? Central question as part of your strategic plan. No one in the room will use ChatGPT more than the next several weeks, in my opinion. It is history. It was created by this little company called OpenAI. And none of us had heard in November 2022 of OpenAI. And the 3 big tech companies, Google, Microsoft, and Apple, all said, AI is an important part of the future. We are the tech companies. We are the leaders. We have deep financial pockets. We have incredibly deep staffing. We will create greater capacity than ChatGPT. And the first one out of the box on it was Google, when in May 13th, they announced something called GPT 4.0. Anybody in the room been on it? Okay, a few. Then on June 11th, Apple announced that they would have in the fall Apple Intelligence. They're renaming AI to Apple Intelligence in their mind, a little marketing plan. They actually released it 3 weeks ago. And then yesterday, October 1st, Microsoft released its new version of Copilot voice. Unbelievable what they can do. I want to take you to Apple AI and show you what it can do. And as I do this, I want you to think about how should we use this in our schools? And my advice to you is this. It's going to be very threatening to a lot of our teachers because it infringes on their practices. And so begin the introduction of AI in this district, as I know you've begun to do, by showing teachers how it can help them get their nights and weekends back. Can help them with IEPs, with lesson plans, with assessments. But let me show you how it can work with instruction. It's on an iPhone, but you're going to have to buy a new iPhone. And on the table in front of him, he's got a piece of paper. He's got his iPhone over the paper. And I put up in the left-hand corner what the iPhone is seeing. It's a math problem. I'm just going to give you a little simple math problem first. Watch how it walks through, because what we have with stage 3 is it's no longer just text like ChatGPT. It's audio, it's video, it's imaging, and it sounds just like a person having a total conversation with you.
So, ChatGPT, what equation did I write down there?
Ah, I see it now. You wrote down 3x plus 1 equals 4.
Yep, exactly. So what's the first step I should take to try to solve this?
The first step is to get all the terms with x on one side and the constants on the other side. So what do you think we should do with that plus 1?
Okay, I'm going to try to subtract 1 from both sides, and then I'll see what I get.
Great idea. Perfect. Now, what do you get when you subtract 1 from both sides?
Okay, so ChatGPT, this is what I ended up with. How does this look?
Spot on. Now you've isolated the term with x on one side, and it looks like 3x equal 3. What do you think we should do next to solve for x?
I'm not sure. Can you give me another hint?
Of course. You have 3x, and you want to find the value of x. Think about what operation would undo multiplication.
Is it subtraction?
Close, but think of the opposite of multiplication, because 3x means 3 times x.
Okay, I think it's division. Let me try to divide both sides by 3, and let me see what I get.
Bingo! Go ahead and divide both sides by 3.
Okay, so ChatGPT, this is what I ended up with. How does this look?
Goes on and said it looks great. It could be a difficult math problem, it could be a science problem, it could be any subject matter, any grade level. But it can go deeper than that. If you want kids to really learn something, they got to learn how to apply it. Would any of you like to take an 11th or 12th grade math or science test today? But you all passed them once, or you wouldn't be here. Why could you do it back then, but you can't today? If you don't use it, AI can show the kids how to use it around the area they have an interest in. How many in the room have a child in some sports? Okay, what sport? Baseball. What do you got yours in?
Soccer.
Soccer, okay. Let's talk about baseball and soccer. Have you ever thought about, and let's go to soccer first. Have you ever thought about the fact that math and science are underlying concepts in soccer?
I have, my kids haven't. But
You have it, your kids haven't. Okay. And you're over the schools, right?
yes.
Okay. So tell me how first period math relates to second period science, relates to third period phys ed in Douglas County schools.
It depends on what level. So like physics, geometry could be a part of that. They could
But is it?
right.
Yeah, is it? Because, and it's nobody's fault. Okay? You're ahead of almost every district in the country, and we're not doing it here.
Yeah.
Why? Because we have a 20th century industrialized model, which was built around an assembly line model.
Yeah.
And each period is for the same length of time. And when the bell rings, the next period's got nothing to do with the previous period. So we teach disciplines in isolation, but if you want kids to apply it, you got to apply. It's multidiscipline, and you got to find out what they like. So find out that his son likes soccer, and then take that math problem and say, okay, would that relate to soccer whatsoever or to physics? And it would instantly give you how it relates to soccer, to math or physics. Baseball, same thing. Find out what the kid likes, and AI can then tell them how the content you're trying to teach or the skill you're trying to teach might relate to an area they have an interest in. Watch it.
Why would you ever need to use this in the real world? I'm really skeptical.
That's a fair question. Linear equations pop up in a lot of everyday situations, even if we don't realize it. For example, calculating expenses, planning travel, cooking, and even in business for profit and loss calculations. It's basically a way to solve problems where you need to find an unknown value. Plus,
Wow,
it's
okay. You know, I have a lot of unknown values in my life. I'm totally convinced we should.
And goes on and explains, and you can ask any question you want and it'll apply it. But it'll take you deeper than that. It can take something that seems complex to you, and what is easy for us might be really hard for a kid because they don't have the basic understanding. So let me give you a problem that might be difficult for us. And I want everybody to look at it, and how many of you can tell me what this says? How many can read the computer code? I know Erin can because she has a tech background. But how many of the rest of you can actually tell me what it says? Or tell me if there's anything wrong with that code. AI can in a blink of an eye. And I tell you that because one of the fastest growing career and tech ed programs in the country in the last 3 years has been coding. Huge, huge program, really needed. Not any longer. Department of Labor is projecting between 85 to 92% decline in coders in the next 2 years because AI can do it. Watch it.
Could you give me a really brief one-sentence description of what's going on in the code?
This code fetches daily weather data for a specific location and time period, smooths the temperature data using a rolling average, annotates a significant weather event on the resulting plot, and then displays the plot with the average, minimum, and maximum temperatures over the year.
They kept going, and they finally said, wait a minute, too much information. Can you put it in a graph or a table for us so we understand it? Instantly into a table, and then explains it.
Okay, ChatGPT. I'm sharing with you the plot now. I'm wondering if you can give me a really brief one-sentence overview of what you see.
The plot displays smoothed average, minimum, and maximum temperatures throughout 2018, with a notable annotation marking a big rainfall event in late September.
Fantastic. I have another question for you. Which months do you see the hottest temperatures, and roughly what temperatures do those correspond to?
It also can take everything I've shown you and instantaneously convert it into 50 different languages. So you can have a total conversation where you can be speaking English and they can hear it in their native language. They respond in their native language and you hear it in English. Now you do it with an earbud. I can't show you the earbud here, but watch how it works.
So I would like you to function as a translator. I have a friend here who only speaks Italian, and I only speak English. And every time you hear English, I want you to translate it to Italian. And if you hear Italian, I want you to translate it back to English. Is that good?
Perfetto.
Mark, io mi chiedo se le balene potessero parlare, cosa ci direbbero?
Mike, she wonders if whales could talk, what would they tell us?
They might ask, how do we solve linear equations?
Potrebbero chiederci come risolviamo le equazioni.
One more thing it can do. It can understand imaging. So, young children, they like to draw pictures. And you probably got them on your refrigerator doors, right? It can look at a picture and tell you what it's trying to say.
Wrote one last thing I'd love if you could take a look at.
Of course, I'd love to see what you wrote. Show it to me whenever you're ready.
Okay, so this is what I wrote down. What do you see?
I see. I love ChatGPT. That's so sweet.
How does that impact our instructional programs? In your strategic plan, do you want to keep your 20th century model? One teacher, 25 kids. I have 5 children, and they range from truly gifted and talented to severely disabled and kind of evenly spread in between. How would any one teacher in one class take those 5 kids and get them to the same place academically? Much less even around their areas of interest. You understand AI can do that. So some people say, oh, whoa, we won't need teachers. Oh, yes, we do. Teachers actually become more important in this scenario, but the difference is they do something different than they used to do. It's a fundamental shift in the role of teaching if we effectively use AI. And in the workplace, they're going to adopt it because they got problems. They can't find workers. And they say it can do all kinds of tasks. So the Department of Labor has identified jobs they think in the next 2 years, not 5 years, 2 years, will either be replaced or more likely totally transformed to do tasks that are almost fundamentally different than the job presently requires. And I'm sorry, that would include some of the people in the room in central administration jobs here. So let me show you some jobs that they identify fundamentally changed over the next 2 years. And I want you to think about whether you know anybody in any of these jobs. And notice the last one, paralegal, because we're going to come back to it. And some of these were the hottest jobs out there over the last 2 or 3 years. The workplace is fundamentally changing. I'm going to go back to that paralegal one, because every job I show you here, there are apps out for now. And one of the apps in the paralegal area is called Cold Counsel. It costs $199. A law firm in Albany, I live in Albany, New York, a neighbor of mine, a senior partner of it, a large law firm, they had 30 paralegals on staff. They bought that app and within 1 month eliminated 23 of the 30 paralegals. I want to take you back to my daughter's IEP. Think about what it could do in 7 seconds. As long as you could describe the legal case really clearly in the prompt, it will conduct all the legal research for you in seconds. Normally it would take hours, if not days. It will summarize the court rulings and filings in the jurisdiction in which you're trying to bring the case. It will create, assemble, analyze, and create a red-line version of all the contracts. It will propose arguments for the legal brief and filing, prepare the deposition questions and all communications for the case. Please tell me what a paralegal does. Right there. A really important question. What 7 did they keep? write the prompt, and sophisticated AI editor. They kept the 7 most competent. And that's really important for us to understand. A lot of people think AI is going to dumb down what people need to know. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. Content and content knowledge and the ability to sophisticatedly analyze content actually becomes more important here. Who's going to get hurt are the lower level knowledge workers, not the upper level knowledge workers. If we think about the last century, if you think about what automation did to manual workers in agriculture, in all variety of industries, automation changed those jobs. But there are still workers, and the ones that are left have to know how to do the basic job to analyze whether the technology is doing it right or not. They actually have to be the most competent. AI will increase the importance of content knowledge. That's one of the reasons I think you are in a very advantageous place, because you have great content and great performance by your students. Don't give that up. And that's why it's continuing the evolution and the journey that you're on. But then there is stage 4. Remember I mentioned Apple, Google, and Microsoft. There's a fourth, another tech company and tech leader. Who is that leader? Elon Musk. Tesla. He says they're going to convert their company to become the world leader in taking everything I've now showed you and integrating it into roboticized equipment. Let me play a couple of videos to see how that plays out.
The role of the human worker in manufacturing is shifting from manual labor to knowledge work. This transition requires a change in mindset, from performing repetitive actions to embracing critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity. Human workers will increasingly be responsible for tasks that require uniquely human capabilities, such as complex decision-making, strategic planning, and interpersonal communication. This shift emphasizes the importance of soft skills alongside technical proficiency in the future of manufacturing work.
And Elon Musk told his board 3 weeks ago that he wants to have this become the centerpiece of their company.
One of this industry's biggest proponents is Elon Musk. He's made some bold predictions that Tesla's robot, Optimus, could propel it to a $25 trillion market cap, and that it will amount to a majority of Tesla's long-term value, with demand as high as 10 to 20 billion units.
Tesla is arguably the world's biggest robotics company because our cars are like semi-sentient robots on wheels. And with the full self-driving computer and all of the neural nets, it kind of makes sense to put that onto a humanoid form. And it's intended to be friendly, of course, and navigate through a world built for humans and eliminate dangerous, repetitive, and boring tasks.
And all this happens, and at the same time, employers can't find workers. And they're beginning to look at education and saying, wait a minute, it's not connecting up, especially higher education. Now, I think they're partly wrong, but I also believe this is why Douglas County is a pacesetter school district here. Because nationally what's happening is the kids coming out of our high schools, not in Douglas County, but nationally coming out of our high schools and going to college, their success rate is pretty low. You trump that. The national data is this. Those who go to a 4-year college, graduate from high school 6 years ago, what percentage of them have completed a baccalaureate degree after 6 years? And it's 43%. That's not your data. That's the national data. That's why you're a pacesetter district. Your kids are doing well. Now, if you disaggregate the data, the fastest growing group of kids in this country are kids who are living at or below the poverty line. Their graduation rates are 13%. Of those graduating from high school or college, after 6 years, those making it, what percentage of them are working in a job that required any higher education? In other words, they took a job they never had to go to school for. They could have gotten that waitress job right out of high school. It's 41%. And Business and Industry says, this is a big time problem. We've got to find a model that works. You have the foundations to do that. Great for your kids and great for the nation to have a model to see how it works. And it becomes especially problematic because of the push from business. They are so unhappy with higher education that these companies, since January 1, have said they will no longer require a baccalaureate degree for any job in their company, or dramatically reduce the number of jobs they require a baccalaureate for. And these are big-time companies. And the push is towards micro-credentials. And I think you not only lead the state, you may lead the nation in creating micro-credentials in this school district, in the very building we're in. See, it's not about college-ready or career-ready. It's about college and career-ready. And you are better positioned, in my opinion, on both than you can find almost anywhere else. But there's still a road to go down to complete this journey. If you look at this chart, Bureau of Labor Statistics, up the left-hand side are the number of people seeking employment for every one job opening. So in 2004, there was an average of 2.5 people seeking employment for every one job opening. So you had a choice. HR people, you want a choice when you go to hire somebody. That peaked during the recession, peaked again during the pandemic. Look what it's been for the last 3 years, 0.73. There are 8.8 million jobs in this country, according to the Department of Labor, 8.8 million that have been open for more than 6 months that they can't find workers for. And so Business and Industry is saying, we have a huge pipeline problem, and so we're hiring people we would never have hired in the past, and they're not showing up for work. And they got a poor work ethic. And we got an explosion in mental health issues. And they finally say, and AI is our solution. So the private sector is moving at lightning speed towards AI, while we're still debating, what should we do about it? Should we use it? How do we deal with the challenges? The world outside of school is changing faster than we are, is the gap. And company after company's got problems. They're saying, look, we learned. You got to keep up with the technology. We learned from other companies. Remember Kodak? How'd they do? They owned the camera business. They went bankrupt because they didn't keep up. Or how about Blockbusters? Anybody ever read anything from Blockbuster? Borders. Anybody still got a BlackBerry? Toys R Us. Who owned the computer market in the 1990s? IBM. How'd they miss it? As I bring this towards closure, and Erin and I will then take Q&A. Ladies and gentlemen, workers are not going to be replaced by AI. That's not true. They're going to be replaced by a person that has skills that AI does not have. So the first part of your strategic planning, as a parent, the first thing you need to think about is, what are those skills? What are the skills that my son or daughter needs to be independent as an adult? And fortunately, there are 3 major national studies in the last year that give us that information. And they all came up with basically the same information. They broke it into 4 categories: cognitive skills, interpersonal skills, self-leadership skills, digital skills. I know you can't read it from there, so I've blown it up. Here are the cognitive skills or academic skills. And you lead the state in number 1 and 2 on this list. But where are the last 9 in your curriculum? Where are they on your report card? How are you assessing them? They are the questions for your strategic plan. Or, AI can't do these things. And kids are coming to school with less and less of these. And so it's a change in our instructional practices. What you're going to find is not so much a change in curriculum. It's the integration of curriculum across disciplines, so you can teach to an application level. But it's also more problem-based learning where they have to work in teams solving complex problems over a period of time. It's a change in instructional practices, not in curriculum. And these are the self-leadership skills. Douglas County parents, you expect kids not to have low-level jobs. This is the McKinsey study of the 18,000 companies. These are the 20% of the lowest paying jobs. They are the 20% of the highest paying. All of them require basic cognitive skills and higher cognitive skills. But look at the amount of time spent on the other skills the higher you go up the employment ladder. We're going to have to engage this generation of students differently. AI can be an incredible resource in helping us do that. What's your 1 and 3 year professional development plan for your teachers to help them make the transition? Need to be part of your strategic planning discussion. I'm just going to go by these because it just explains it in more depth. But that's why I think you got to relook at your North Star a little bit. And you can't change faster than the rate of readiness and trust. So let me play a final video. I know because I talked to so many of you coming in that we're heavily staffed in here. There are some parents, thank you very much. Thanks everybody for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't get in front of the parents in the community, you can't get in front of the staff. Culture trumps strategy. The first step here is to create a culture to say we need to do something different. Because let me show you, if you try to change people before they're ready to be changed, you're not going to win. Watch a family where the husband wants everything digital and the wife wants paper. How many in the room still like paper? Let's see who wins.
Emma. Huh? Emma. 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 Emma.
So continue the evolution. You're well underway. These are the 3 questions that are going to be in this QR code. We really want you to give us your best advice on all 3. You don't have to write us a few words, because it will help inform the beginning of the strategic planning process. That's the QR code, if you would. Erin?
First, let's thank Dr. Daggett for his remarks this morning, so thank you. And truly, here in Douglas County, we are really excited to be entering into this strategic planning effort, because we really are in a position for our kids to lead the way. As Dr. Daggett talked about, we are leading the market in micro-credentialing our students and offering them opportunities that will make them college and career ready, and we're working really hard to continue to meet the demands of our workforce and of our community. We're dipping into AI technology instead of banning it. We're making sure that we're dipping into it in an ethical and safe manner so that our students can actually have exposure to those skills, because we know that hiding from that technology will not help them lead the way. And we want to work with our community over the next few months to work on what we need to do, not just as a school system, but as an entire community, in order to make sure that our kids have all the skills that they need, and that starts from childhood that starts from conversations around play-based versus device-based childhood, all the way into those, all of those skills that we need to be providing here in school. So we are really excited to engage in this conversation, and we're really thankful to Dr. Bill Daggett and SPN for assisting us in this process.